Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Republic Broadcasting, and today we're going to be talking about the latest arc in the new Season 7 of the Clone Wars. This arc is going to focus a lot on Ahsoka mainly, and kind of what happens to her pretty much directly after she gets out of the Jedi Order, and she's trying to get her feet under her and figure out what's going on. So, here today with me is Ben. Say hi, Ben.
Hello.
And we're just gonna go ahead and get right into it, starting with episode 5, Gone Without a Trace. Then it's gonna go into episode 6, Deal or No Deal, episode 7, Dangerous Debt, and episode 8, Together Again. So, Ben, did you want to give us a little synopsis of each of these episodes?
Yeah, sure. So, Gone Without a Trace. Ahsoka meets a girl named Trace Martez in the underworld of Coruscant, which is pretty cool. We don't get to see a lot of that in canon, so I thought that was really cool. They kind of her sister Rafa has these defective droids, and they have to kind of go stop it from rampaging throughout the Coruscant underworld.
Yep, I think
Uh,
if I could stop you real quick, I think that to me was kind of the weakest of the arc. It didn't feel like it had to me a lot of like sustenance, I guess.
I don't disagree. I actually this whole arc for the most part, there's some really good stuff towards the end, but a lot of it feels very like setup for the final arc.
Yeah, that's kind of
And
how I was feeling too. I'm gonna let you keep going, and because I don't want to interrupt after every single episode. Here we go, going on to episode 6.
Deal or No Deal. So Rafa, Trace's sister, has this deal with the Pike Syndicate to get these spice shipments. Trace doesn't really understand what the spice is used for, so doesn't really see the big deal until like Ahsoka explains everything, and they all kind of realize how bad it is. And then Trace kind of stupidly dumps all of the spice in hyperspace,
I love it.
which is really bad for them because they're dealing with a criminal organization who's not going to be happy about their spice missing. And I think spice in Star Wars, from what I understand, is kind of like a drug. Like, I don't want to say heroin, but something like that.
Yeah, it
Like,
seems that it can be made into many things. It's very versatile, and in the wrong hands, it becomes something very dangerous. Whereas in the right hands, it's something super helpful. But it's definitely kind of a hot commodity around there.
it seems like it can be used as medicine or something, but it can also be used for other worse purposes. And we kind of go from there. We go to Dangerous Debt. They are captured by the Pikes after Ahsoka's initially successful force tricking them,
Jedi mind
and
tricks.
the Jedi mind trick. And then so they get captured. And this episode, I actually think is the worst of the four. Not that it's not entertaining, but they start captured and then they end captured, and it kind of feels like nothing was accomplished.
I know. I just had that thought myself. Was now that I think about it, was this episode, did it have anything of sustenance? Did was there like a big heart to heart in this one? Maybe there was, and that's why the next episode they go back after Ahsoka releases them.
So it's not. It wasn't like worthless. It's just, and there's some good character stuff in development, but narratively, I felt like episode almost didn't need to be there.
Yeah.
Like you could have just not had it, but it wasn't bad. It was still entertaining.
Yep.
And then we get into episode 8, which I think was the best of the four,
Yep.
and not just because it was ending. I enjoyed the arc, but it had a lot of really cool tie-ins. It felt like it tied directly into what's going to happen into the next arc. We got a lot of really really good moments. So Trace and Rafa don't know that Ahsoka is a Jedi until the end,
Yep.
and they find out. And initially they're kind of unhappy about it, but once they realize the kind of person Ahsoka is, they're able to look past that, and they're all friends by the end. And it was a nice episode, and it set up really well for the next arc.
Yeah, I thought so too. That definitely I thought was the best. I think I don't want to say a problem, but kind of like what kept drawing me back from episode 6 and 7 was, Ahsoka is capable of so much more, and you can just tell how much she's holding back in like every encounter that they have to not kind of like reveal that she was once a Jedi. So to me, I'm just like always like, oh come on, I know you can do just a little bit more than that, and I just kept wanting her to full on Jedi out and kind of whoop some butt.
And that would have been fun. We got a lot of that in Dangerous Debt,
Yeah, we
but
did, and I think in the last episode, especially once like she revealed that she was a Jedi previously, she was able to freely move a little better.
There was a really good moment actually in Dangerous Step when they're trying to jump across the bridge, and so Trace and Rafa go first, and they kind of barely make it, and then the bridge is really long, and Rafa's like, "Well, we gotta go. Ahsoka's gonna have to figure out her own way," and Ahsoka just jumps way over the gap in the bridge. I thought that was really cool.
Yep.
Um,
And she even pushed Trace because she
uh,
wasn't gonna make it.
Something I really like about the Clone Wars is we get to see a lot more of the acrobatics
Yep.
and stuff. I feel like less so the original trilogy, probably because they just didn't think of it at the time.
I
But
also don't
the
think they had the
sequel,
technology quite as heavy back then.
I think that they could have figured it out, but I think that they didn't fully scope out what a Jedi can and can't do.
Mm-hmm.
The original trilogy, and that was fleshed out more in the prequels. And the sequel trilogy felt like it held back a lot in that regard too, in terms of the flair and the whimsy of it.
Yeah,
And
I mean it makes sense though
until
that it would because these people haven't been like classically trained, so to speak, from the Jedi Order. They've kind of had a impromptu, even Kylo Ren at that point had kind of a impromptu training initially by Luke, who never got trained classically himself. You know.
he Kylo did get some formal training. I don't know exactly how long, because I don't know exactly when Leia and Han sent him off to go train with Luke. But I know that in nine they kind of ramped that up a little bit more, where Rey and Kylo are doing these flips and transporting objects through space, and
Yeah. Yep. That's true. And I think they did start to get a little bit into it in episode 9 there.
I know that, yeah, that's what I'm saying. I totally agree. But as far as the episodes go, I thought it wrapped up really nicely. I guess when I say that this arc wasn't awesome, it's not that I didn't enjoy it. What a little frustrating is this is being marketed as the last season of Clone Wars ever. So you kind of want every arc to knock it out of the park.
Yeah, for sure. And it's a little hard too because so to me this is pretty soon after she left the order and I'm thinking there's going to be some time in between here and the next arc, right? When she's working with the Mandalorians a little bit and then she's going to eventually reach back to Anakin at some point from at least the trailer we saw. I don't know. Do you think it's actually been a while since she left the order through this arc, or do you think it's kind of at the beginning, like right after she left?
It was probably like at least a few weeks or a couple of months after, if I had to guess.
Yeah.
Just because she had a whole new outfit, she had a speeder, she had money. Like, I
Yeah.
feel like it
think
could have been like
I
literally
think
right
part
after,
of
but
the thing is a lot of this arc, it didn't feel like it had an impactful moment through the galaxy, right? It was very focused, narrow story between these people, and it didn't further the Clone Wars at all, you know?
yeah, no, I agree with that, and it was really nice to see Ahsoka. I always like seeing Ahsoka,
Yeah.
so that aspect of it was good. It was just it didn't feel. You're right. It didn't feel like it had a larger consequence to the narrative, the overarching narrative of the Clone Wars leading into Revenge of the Sith.
Yep. I think that could get there with the Mandalorian stuff. And as soon as I saw the person in the cloak, I'm like, well, that's a Mandalorian helmet. So I wasn't exactly sure who it was gonna be. I thought it was Death Watch because I'm like, oh, these guys look kind of dark and ominous, little foreboding there. That seems like a Death Watch kind of stance. What about you? Did you pick it up right away?
I didn't know that they were Death Watch, but that's a good catch that you saw that early on, because they ended up being former Death Watch members.
Yeah, and actually, so I think the leader of that group is Ursa Wren. Um, and I didn't know this, but I just read it that that's the mother of Sabine.
Really?
Yeah. So I did not know that from Sabine being from Rebels, of course, and Ursa Wren, I believe, is Sabine Wren's mother. I just learned that. And
It's really interesting.
kind of like it makes sense though that to me that this would be something of her mother was very much the same kind of rebellious nature that Sabine becomes in the next arc, right, or the next series.
And Rebels, yeah.
But thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I didn't know that that's a good connection, and a lot of people don't like this when Star Wars does this, but I actually do, when all these characters in this huge galaxy with billions or trillions of individuals in it like somehow meet and cross paths, and I like that, because I think people tend to forget that Star Wars is kind of like an intergalactic fairy tale, or not
Yeah. No,
intergalactic, rather
I love it
galaxy-wide fairy
too.
tale.
The only thing that I don't like is when they start to make the universe feel small, right? When you're only focusing on a few characters and you never expand to new people and new situations and things like that.
Right?
But I think they've
Or
handled it very well in this, and you have to see those main characters interact at some point, in my opinion, because that's why they're main characters, right? They're the focal point of the story. It obviously is going to take them together. If they weren't interacting at all, why would they be all main characters, really? You know, I don't know.
I agree, and I think that the characters and the stories are strengthened when you have them intermingle with each other like that.
Yeah,
Cross platform, cross series, even cross movie. Like I really really enjoy that, because then you see those connections and it kind of feels like you're rewarded for keeping up with all of it.
yeah, I think so too. And then you gotta love that one scene where Anakin senses Ahsoka.
And then he just then he lets her go basically.
Yeah, and
Just-
I wonder if like he knew it was Ahsoka or he got like a familiar feeling of Ahsoka and he's just got reminded of his loss and that's why he like let them go, you know. I don't know. Do you
I
think
think he knew it was Ahsoka. Yeah.
yeah. I
I
mean,
think
he's very powerful in the Force, obviously, so I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility. I was just not sure if he really knew it was Ahsoka. I feel like I would have seen a little more shock from his face once he, like, if he definitively knew it was Ahsoka, but maybe not. He's pretty good at hiding his emotions.
sometimes
Sometimes. To certain people.
people, yeah.
Apparently, the entire Jedi can't.
Actually, a little bit of a fun fact. That scene, I believe, was meant to mirror the scene after Vader has his confrontation with Luke in Empire Strikes Back, and Vader's kind of looking out into the space, and he comes over and he senses Luke, and then he kind of walks away. I believe that scene was meant to be mirrored. I saw some sort of image that kind of lined
Interesting.
up the scenes together. I don't know if it was intended or not, but a lot of the times that sort of poetry
Yeah, they love to do that
is
kind of stuff.
intended in Star Wars. So
At least in the later stuff, that seems to be intentional a lot, mirroring the original trilogy.
yeah, for sure.
It does bum me out
So
a little bit that there wasn't. I know it's coming, right? But a little more Anakin because we've got 8 episodes now, and only 2 of them have had Anakin in. I think maybe 3.
I'm kind of hoping that the Siege of Mandalore gets kind of like a. I know that arc obviously centered around Mandalore, but I do hope it gets some Anakin and Obi-Wan. I don't believe that we know exactly when the arc takes place. This might be a good time to just transition into what we hope to see or what we think we're going to see.
Yeah, for sure.
I've heard in some places that people are saying that it takes place during Revenge of the Sith, the actual Siege of Mandalore
Really?
part. Yeah, which would be really interesting.
That would be. I
I've
need
also
to
heard it
rewatch
takes place.
episode 3 to really get a
That
grasp on how long that movie is. How long? How many weeks or months does that movie take place over? Do you know off the top of your head?
so it's not super clear, but I believe it's either a week or 2 weeks. The whole movie.
Yeah. Okay. So it's not very long. It's not an super ongoing thing. I didn't think it was.
But it's also reasonable for Ahsoka to get there and kind of have that situation play out before Order 66, and then that happens. There's a few things I'm hoping to see.
Yeah. All right. Start it off.
I think is essential is I want to see or make strong reference to Order 66, Ahsoka and Rex escaping, how Rex gets the chip out. We don't have to see him actually get the chip out, but like some sort of lying for why he doesn't turn on the Jedi.
Yep.
Would be great. I assume that Order 66 would be kind of what ends the Siege of Mandalore.
Interesting. I know Mandalore goes under Galactic Empire rule after the Empire takes shape.
What I'm guessing happens is that Maul has to escape too because he might be identified as a Jedi because of his lightsaber. And yeah, so that's one thing I'm really hoping we see. The second thing is we don't see Anakin directly, though I would like to see Anakin in some of his darker moments in Revenge of the Sith, which is most of the movie, but like the really, really dark stuff, and maybe Ahsoka sensing it. Not exactly what he's done, but I thought maybe if she thinks she senses his death, maybe on Mustafar or when he gets put in the suit. I think that'd be really beautiful.
Would be interesting. I can't. To me, I find it hard to believe that they would do an arc that takes place during episode 3 and the fall of the Jedi. I think I would love to see that. I think that would be awesome. And to see what they were doing at that time, if she was with Rex, if she was by herself, if she was on Mandalore, if she was somewhere else. I just think that would be really great to see. But to me, it seems unlikely that they would do that, because I was under the impression that this was supposed to lead up all to the beginning of episode 3, and then episode 3 takes it from there and does its thing.
I've heard that as well. I'm not actually sure. I believe there's some story treatments for Siege of Mandalore when they originally wanted to do it, kind of floating out there. I never read them because I just didn't. And then when we found out it was coming back, I definitely wasn't going to try to investigate too much.
Yeah.
But I don't believe that we know exactly. I mean, we're going to find out.
Yeah. I can't wait.
And the other, yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
The other main thing that I want to see is, I know that some people have a hard time seeing the Anakin that we see in Revenge of the Sith and the Anakin we see throughout the Clone Wars as like the same character.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of that just has to do with it being live action versus animation. But I think, there's other thing. I think I personally love Revenge of the Sith. It's actually like my second or third favorite Star Wars movie.
Yep.
But
it's a lot of people's, actually.
Yeah, but the dialogue in a lot of places isn't that great. And I kind of feel like Clone Wars Anakin is really just the same character, but with better written dialogue. And so Matt Lanter's voice is completely different from Hayden's.
Yeah.
They don't sound anything alike. So I think that makes it hard for some people. So I would really like to see them kind of unify those two versions of the character in kind of an inseparable way that will allow people to see that transition a little more smoothly.
Yeah, I definitely think so too. And I never really noticed the voice thing because I love the Clone Wars voice, but now that I think about it, you're totally right. It does sound a lot different than Hayden Christensen.
I think a lot of that is, I know that Hayden Christensen was trying to mirror James Earl Jones in his I don't think dialect is the right word, but just in his cadence and like the way that he's talking. Whether or not that worked for you is subjective, but I think that it's clear that the Clone Wars goes for a much different delivery, even if the character himself is the same. So I think just seeing the Clone Wars version in a Revenge of the Sith scenario or leading into Revenge of the Sith would really help people tie those, and it all feels like one cohesive whole.
I would love to see so many different aspects of, like, if this went right through episode 3, and then you could see a tiny bit of Darth Vader through the Clone Wars, just the very beginning of him. I think that would be kind of an interesting and new way to end the series.
It would be really cool. I don't want to get my hopes up too high.
Nope.
But
always disappointed, but always gonna hope for the best.
I am really excited for this last arc. I'm sad that it's the last arc, but I hope that they tie it directly into the movie.
Yeah, I hope so too. I think that's kind of been my entire hope for the entire series.
And it's never felt like a different universe or anything. It's just, I want to see it tied so inseparably that people can't be like, oh, I like Anakin from this or Anakin from that. It's like, you like the character because they're the same character. And I feel like that'll really help with that mental hurdle that some people have.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it.
So I'm looking forward to it. I don't actually really have anything to add other than, I mean, there's a few other things I'd like to see. The Darth Maul versus Ahsoka fight, I really want to see.
I think they've been teasing that for a while.
Yeah, we know that Ray Park was doing the what's it called, the capture, the motion capture for Maul. So they're awesome. Animating around that, which is going to be really cool. So that fight should be pretty sweet. Dave Filoni has hyped it up a little bit.
I also thought it was interesting, speaking of Maul real quick, that he was able to sense Ahsoka through the hollow.
Yeah, the way that I'm starting to see the Force is that it is as much a visual thing as it is a physical distance sort of thing. I mean, because we've seen in, the movies, characters talk to other characters, probably light years away apart.
Yeah.
Because there's no time dilation in the Star Wars universe. or the galaxy just isn't big enough for it to matter.
Could be. We'll not get too hard into the physics.
Oh, no, it doesn't matter. Time dilation is actually really a bummer when you start thinking about it, but that's beside the point. And I think because he could physically see Maul in this case, he could sense her too.
Yeah.
In Clone Wars, I believe we saw, I believe it was Sidious force choking Dooku through the hologram.
Yeah. Yes.
We've seen Vader
Yes, he
force
definitely
choke
has in one of the earlier
Monitor.
seasons. I can't remember which one it was, but we definitely have seen him interact through the holo.
Has definitely happened before, and I think that's really cool. I always like when they expand.
Yeah, and I mean,
And
even
always do
in
stuff.
episode 8, Snoke did it to Kylo.
And Snoke also did it to Hux.
Yep.
Tossed him around in the beginning of the movie. So,
Yep.
speaking of episode 8, really quick to jump back to the arc, them kind of getting nothing accomplished in Dangerous Debt when they attempt to escape and then they get put right back in the prison reminds me of the Finn
The
Rose
Finn arc in
part of the
8
movie. And
had
this
no
is
bearing on
nothing
the movie
against
whatsoever.
the actors or anything, but it kind of felt like that part of the narrative was a waste of time, but like it felt like it.
Yeah.
Even though I might have enjoyed certain parts, it just didn't feel like it advanced the story very much.
Yeah.
So it
But-
kind of reminded me of that when I was watching.
Yeah, for sure. But
Is there anything else you're hoping to see in Siege of
I
Mandalore?
don't think there's anything else specifically that I'm hoping to see. The biggest thing for me is I hope it feels like it advances the galaxy and the war and the entire. I want it to have a big impact on the universe, because I think that's what this last arc was kind of missing for me. Was like, okay, but how does this advance the Clone Wars, which is the title of the show? And I think that is kind of the main thing I want, is some kind of bearing on the universe, or going into Order 66 and something with Anakin and Obi-Wan.
Wouldn't say this as much for the first 3 episodes, but definitely the last episode is that whole situation is definitely pushing Ahsoka back into that path. As they even said, I mean, she was concerned it would lead her back to the Jedi.
If Order 66 is the thing that stops her from turning back, it's like maybe she's getting so close to going back to the Order, but then Order 66 happens and that kills that pipe dream.
Oh yeah, something that I, since I was a little negative on it, something that I did really like about the arc is that it reinforced a lot of the themes that I think the prequels are going for, and the rest of the show, that the Jedi kind of suck, and how the galaxy kind of views them as warmongers.
Yeah. And it definitely makes it feel that really the Separatists do have some valid arguments and points that I think should have been addressed by the Republic, or maybe the Separatists, I think their leader was kind of screwed up, and I don't think they went about it in the right way, but I do think they had some valid points as to the issues with the Republic.
I mean, the Republic was definitely corrupt. It's not like they were wrong, but in this case, they didn't realize that they were trading one corrupt leadership for another, because it's the same guy ultimately.
Yeah, the same corrupt guy.
Yeah, so I really like that aspect. People don't really like the Jedi, and what really hit me actually was when Rafa was explaining. It was Rafa or Trace was kind of explaining to Ahsoka why they don't like the Jedi, and they had like a specific personal experience with that, and so her family got killed. It wasn't like specifically the Jedi's fault, but the Jedi also didn't stop to help the situation. They just kept chasing the bad guys and didn't catch them. The part that I really want to hammer home is when the Jedi goes up to them and is like, basically like, rejoice. They kind of like the same advice that Yoda gave Anakin in episode 3, and it's just like people like just died. Like they have such this detachment from
death.
I want to say like reality. Like the Jedi have very low emotional IQ. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways,
they're not supposed to have emotional attachments.
As somehow incredibly compassionate yet totally dispassionate in other ways. And I like that moment because it reinforces that I really do think Yoda's advice in episode 3 was intended to be bad advice. Not in that he was wrong necessarily, but he was thinking of it logically, not from the perspective of somebody in turmoil.
Yeah.
And I think that the Jedi kind of did the same thing. Just lucky for them, Rafa and Trace were basically powerless orphans at that point, so they didn't have the power to change much in their situation, or it would have been a lot harder for them.
Yeah, saying your parents died, my bad, is not probably what they want to hear, especially young children.
Yeah, it's just it's really wild, and I really like that this arc did reinforce those themes. There's some people that really still don't get it, that the Jedi are supposed to be sucky. But I feel like if you're really paying attention to this episode, I think you'll get that out of it too.
Yeah, I think so too. But I think that's going to about wrap it up for this episode of Republic Broadcasting, and we'll be back in a few more weeks to talk about the final arc of the Clone Wars, and unfortunately the final of the entire series. So join us in about a month or so when all those come out. Broadcasting. Oh, go ahead.
Hopefully I'm right about everything.
I hope Ben's right about everything too. He normally is. Take everything he says for 100% face value.
Yes, exactly.
Broadcasting, signing off.